Hey everybody, hope you're doing good today. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo. It is December 19th and 19 days after my moto crash, laying down my motorcycle, breaking a bunch of bones, and feeling okay, but had a busy night, or a really fun night last night with everybody at church. And boy, today I am slow going. Woo, man, those muscles are tired. So welcome to the morning devotion with me, Bo Willette. Hope you guys are doing good. I'm a Southern California born and raised San Fernando Valley guy. Moved into Simi Valley, and anyway, that's kind of where I'm from. My background, super secular progressive, not from the church background at all. But ended up reading the Bible, and man, lo and behold, it answered a lot of questions. A lot of questions that I had about life and why the world is the way it is, why people are the way they are, why we can't seem to just get it together. It's amazing that if you just think about what you say, you know, those conversations that you have, you know, when you talk, you know, if you just think about what really is the motivator behind it, you'll find a lot of times it's not faith at all, right? It's a lot of fear. And a lot of fear and insecurity and a lot of discontentment and a lot of stuff going on in us that moves out of us. And I found Jesus' words so true, right? It's not what goes into a human being that defiles them. It's not really so much about the food, right, that you take in, even though that does matter. It's not that Jesus is saying it doesn't matter, but he's just saying it's not what defiles you. It's not what really is the issue between you and the Creator, but it's what comes out of you. And he gives a list of all this stuff and the wranglings and the striving and the envy and the, you know, all this stuff that's in us. And boy, so true. So Daniel chapter 6, today I just go through the Bible in my devotions. Glad you could join me. Tina, what's happening? Thanks so much for the pictures too last night. That was awesome. All the pictures were great. And yeah, very cool. Very fun time. So let's get into it. And yeah, there's nothing more I need to say, I think, other than let's do it, right? Daniel chapter 6. So Darius the Mede decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces. And he appointed a high officer to rule over each province. The king also chose Daniel and two others as administrators to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interest. Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. Hey, being a good administrator is pretty cool. And, you know, I strive to do as good as I can as an administrator, just administrating the life of the church that I'm a part of. But Daniel was like the ultimate administrator guy. I mean, so if you're out there and you go, hey man, I'm kind of the administrator guy. I don't know if that's really that important. Well, it was in Daniel's life, and it certainly was something that exalted him to be a very prominent person, to actually rule over many other people in the kingdom of the Medo-Persian Empire. This is after the Babylonian Empire. So Daniel's been in the land of Babylon for quite some time now. And it says, then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs. But they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. Boy, maybe that's something I should strive for in life. Is there anything that people can condemn me of? You know, and, you know, that's something that, you know, I can think about. And I go, yeah, there is some things that I don't do very well. And maybe I need to work on those things. You know, but Daniel was one of those guys who had a lot of integrity, you could say. And integrity is, you know, one of those things where sometimes people boast about their integrity. They go, yeah, I'm just, you know, I'm really about integrity and having a strong integrity. And yet their pride kind of oozes out of them, right? And it doesn't feel like there's really integrity. because, it seems like they got a hole that shines that's in the boat. You know what I mean? If you have a boat and you got a hole in it, it's got a leak. It doesn't have much integrity, right? It's not holding, buoyancy well. And so sometimes people will say, hey, well, I got nothing no issues in my life, and I'm just about integrity. But the problem is that pride is one of the holes, and it's certainly showing, the leak in you, so to speak. So it's kind of an interesting thing, this integrity thing. Integrity should have a humility with it, and a lowly mind. And this is the cool thing about Jesus. He was meek and lowly. He wasn't this prideful pomp, and he was the most perfect one with integrity. He literally said to people, hey, point out any sin that I got. And no one could, because he had a perfect record when it came to his integrity. He had no holes in the boat, none whatsoever. No cracks at all, no leaks. But you and me, we got some leaks. We're a little leaky, you could say, maybe. And so, not maybe, it's true. We are leaky. And but they couldn't condemn Daniel. They couldn't find something out there. He was really above reproach. And I love that. He was that guy who really had nothing, that you could just look at him or look at his life or examine him on a day-to-day basis and just see anything that really, really stood out as being bad. And he was faithful, always responding, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded our only chance in finding grounds for accusing Daniel would be in connection with the rules of his religion. So, what is the motivation for these other administrators and high officers as they begin searching for some fault in Daniel? It says Daniel was actually put to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interest. But you really could tell that there was probably some envy that was going on in these people. Why is this Jew ruling things? Why is he the one who has the money, has the position, has the power? Why is it these Hebrews, this Hebrew in particular, is running the show? I mean, what is it about him? Is there like some kind of, Jew favoritism going on or something like that? What is the deal? And you could see this kind of bent going on, in their hearts, where it was like, was it prejudice? Were they just bummed that they weren't, Medo-Persian people? Were they bummed that, Daniel was a Jewish man? Were they bummed and envious of his track record, that he was known to be wiser and a better administrator than anyone else, and that he just did his job better? And maybe that's what they were envious of. But however we look at it, we can see that envy really can move us to hate people. When we envy people and we want what they want, but we want them injured, we don't want them to prosper. We want them to be punished, judged. We become very filled with a type of emotion that is so negative that it can lead to murder. And that's radical. Jesus warns us about that, about hating people in our heart, right? Holding hatred in your heart for people. And, you got to ask those questions about, are you envious? Are you prejudiced? Those kind of things. Why are you envious? Psalm 73 tells us really clear, hey, don't be envious of those rich people. Don't be envious of those who it seems like they're getting over on everybody. No one's getting over on anybody. It's a psalm of Asaph, and it's a good one about that issue. So you might want to check it out. So it says that the administrators and high officials went to the king and said, "Long live the king Darius." Notice what comes out of their mouth through this motivation of envy. Flattery. Isn't that interesting? Flattery is what comes out sometimes in a person when they're envious. Meaning they're envious towards someone else, but they flatter the person in power to be able to move them, right? To get them to do something so that you can get what you want done. Manipulation. We use flatteries a lot of times to manipulate, to control situations. What do you do to control people? Are you bummed that you can't control people? Do you want people to do everything that you want them to do? Do you think your way is so right to live that you can say to people, hey, you need to do it this way. You don't understand. This is right. And this is the right thing. And do you see that maybe you're manipulating? Maybe you're trying to control. Maybe you're just acting out of a ton of fear. And there's no faith in it at all. We have to let people be people. And let people kind of, not everybody's going to do what you want them to do. Not everybody's going to think the way you think, and that's okay. You can try to force it. You can try to coerce them. You can try to manipulate them. You can try to do all kinds of things to control people. And people do all the time. It happens in families every day where people are manipulating other people in that family to control them, to get them to do what they want them to do. It's crazy. But flattery is one of those things. Oh, Darius, you're so cool, man. You're so cool. But yet really in that flattery is a manipulation heart. Right? Their heart's not right. We know that. And we see that it comes off as flattery. Darius goes, oh man, that's great. Man, it's so awesome. I'm jamming. I'm doing good. And man, these people dig me. It's not that they dig you, Darius. It's just that they're flattering you because they want to move you. And so you have to understand that sometimes when we flatter people, what we're doing is we're actually trying to move them, manipulate them, and control them. Not a good thing. Very sinful. And sometimes this sin is one that pops up every day in us as human beings. It's just constantly there. Sometimes it tyrannizes us, this kind of envy and this kind of manipulation and this kind of wanting to control. It can tyrannize, meaning it can bother us so much. It's all the time in our lives. And you can see that in people that have become overbearing. Where, you can tell if you're overbearing. You know how? Because people struggle with hanging out with you. It's hard to talk to you because you have a way about you, and it's probably trying to control and trying to manipulate and trying to force and trying to move and trying to this. Not those type of things. You could see that behavior going on in these people, right? And it's just a reflection of us. Man. And it says, and we are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officials, advisors, and governors. Notice, hey, everybody thinks you should be doing this. Everybody thinks it's a great idea. Does that mean it's not control? It's not being manipulative? No. So you can get everybody on your side, but you're still what? Manipulating. And the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced, give orders, that the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue sign this law that it cannot be changed, an official law of the Medes and the Persians that cannot be revoked. So King Darius signed the law. So the law is something that can't be revoked or changed in the Medo-Persian government. That's kind of how it rolls. When it's law, it's law. But you see these people, right, just moving a bunch of people to say, oh yeah, this is great. And maybe you don't tell everybody why you're doing it, but you're getting them with you so that you can, manipulate people or manipulate the king. And that's sad that we get other people on our side. They might not know the whole story, meaning they don't know our heart. If these administrators went to the other administrators and say, listen, we really want to kill Daniel, and we really are envious of his position, maybe we're prejudiced, we don't like Jewish people, or maybe we're just really bummed that he's good at what he does, and he's a lot better than us, but we just want him out. We want him taken out. And so the way we can do that is through manipulating the king. Join me to do that. Will you join me in manipulating the king? If you went that route, probably a lot of people would be like, man, dude, that's evil, man. What are you doing? But it never comes off that way, does it? In our families, in our church environment, it never comes off that way. It always is very sneaky and subtle. And it's a way for these certain administrators that really have it in for Daniel to try to gain some kind of control over the situation, because they can't control the king per se, and they can't control Daniel, but they're going to try. They're going to try to make it right for themselves. What's going to make them feel better? You can see how this works, right? And I hope you can kind of go, man, that sounds familiar. I think I'm getting this. Ooh, this is kind of close to home. Because it is. It's human nature, man. It's part of our fallen nature for sure. And it says, and now your majesty. It says issue. I already said that. Okay, so we're in verse 10. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room, with his windows open towards Jerusalem, and he prayed 3 times a day, just as he has always done, giving thanks to God. So Daniel just literally blows this off and just says, whatever, man, I'm just going to continue to pray. I love that heart, man. Just I'm going to keep serving the Lord. Hey, whatever that person said, whatever they did, okay, thank you, but I'm just going to continue to serve the Lord. And it says, then the officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help. So they went straight to the king and reminded him about this law. Did you not sign a law that for this next 30 days, any person who prays or anyone divine or human except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions? Yes, the king replied, that decision stands. It is an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked. So it seems like the king didn't even know, but these guys knew. Why? Because they were watching him like a hawk. Right? They were watching Daniel like a hawk. Man, what's Daniel going to do? Is he going to do it? Now there's a law because we got it in. We manipulated the king. And now is he going to break it? Because if he breaks it now, like we can get him and now we can move people, that kind of thing. Because you're freaking out as a human being. Things aren't going your way. And so you need to move your children. You got to move your friends. You got to move your parents. Parents got to move this. And everybody's got to move people. You got to manipulate them through some emotional thing, right? And that's so sad. My dad was awesome. When that happened to my dad at times, my dad just never would buy into it. He'd just be like, nope. Like, I ain't going there. Because that's fear talking. That's insecurity talking. That's discontentment talking. He would always say stuff like that to me. Like, that's what's moving that conversation. And that's not trusting God. You can call it that all you want, but it's just not really that. And so my dad was awesome like that. And he would talk that way to me. And I was like, whoa, dude, that's so true, man. It's so right. It's the pretense, that we have, that we're walking with God, but we're not, man. We're just going off of all these instincts run amok, right? And so Daniel just keeps doing what he's doing, which is awesome. And it says, that Daniel, is in jeopardy of being thrown into the den of lions. And it says, yes, the king replied, that decision stands. And then in verse 13 it says, "Then they told the king, that man Daniel, one of the captives from Judah, is ignoring your law, and he still prays to his God 3 times a day." And hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. So, you know what? The people that were manipulating the king could have probably saw that the king was bummed that Daniel was in this predicament. And instead of these people helping the king and saying, "Hey, king, I could see you're bummed out at this. Let's change the law now." That kind of thing. Instead, they're getting exactly what they wanted. See, because they're moving things to control it for themselves, because that's going to make them feel good, and that'll make them blessed. Because when they say I'm blessed, what they're really saying is I feel in control, and and they'll probably praise their God for this great work of, getting Daniel out of it and all that stuff like that. It's really sick how us humans are and how filled we are with this kind of manipulation and pretense and just all this stuff. And it says, in the evening, when the men went together to the king, they said, "Your Majesty, you know that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no law that the king signs can be changed." So they are, giving it to the king. You got to holding the king's feet to the fire. And it says, "So at last the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. And the king said to him, 'May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you.'" And this is the difference between Babylon, the kingdom of Babylon, maybe in the Medo-Persian Empire. Nebuchadnezzar, man, he could have changed on a dime the law. Hey, he's a dictator. But the Medo-Persian Empire seemed to have kind of a accountability form of government, where the king had power, but not full power. He couldn't override things that were done by like a senate, like a committee. And so that's why maybe the Medo-Persian Empire is seen in the visions that Daniel had already in the book as an inferior kingdom to Babylon. So that's just a side note. So it says, "A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with the royal seal and the seal of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel." And so, I forgot to read verse 16, but it says, "So at last the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. And the king said to him, 'May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you.'" Man, that must have been a real touching time for the king to say that to Daniel. And it says, let's jump to verse 19. It says, "Very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried out of the lion's den. And when he got there, he called out in anguish, 'Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve so faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions?' Daniel answered, 'Long live the king. My God sent his angel to shut the lion's mouth so that they would not hurt me. For I have been found innocent in his sight and have not wronged you, your majesty.' The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the den. Not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in his God." Isn't that beautiful? Do I trust in my God? Am I trusting? Daniel probably found out that he couldn't really manipulate God much. Daniel couldn't. Here he was taken captive as a young man to Babylon. He certainly wanted to go back to his home and have things the way it was, but it wasn't going to be that way. He had to really learn that God is sovereign, and that God is sovereign over people and sovereign over nations. Do I trust that? Do I trust that God is sovereign over people, sovereign over nations, that God is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? Do I believe he's that in people's life? Can he move them? Can he touch them? Can he change them? He can. Maybe I just need to go to God and say, "God, this is what I would love to see." But you do that. You put it on their heart. I don't need to manipulate them. I don't need to flatter them. I don't need to have coerce them. I don't need to have to speak to them out of fear of what's going to happen or all the stuff, or insecurities, or I don't need to go that route. I don't need to go off all these emotions that got me kind of locked. But I can trust you. Daniel, man. Daniel's a great example of that. And I love that. So he trusted the Lord. And then it says, then the king gave orders to arrest the men who had maliciously accused Daniel. Whoa. So the king gets it, that they maliciously did this law, that they manipulated, and it was malicious. Now, this is hard to think, is that maybe I am malicious when I use flattery and I try to manipulate and change things through my fears and insecurities. Maybe I am being malicious. See, we like to think other people out there are being malicious, but maybe it's closer to home than I really want to believe. And that's something I got to look at today and say, God, I bring you my heart today. That's why I do a devotion. Lord, I can see this in me. I need this to be taken out. Get it out of me so that I learn to love people, not manipulate people, not coerce them, flatter them, to change their mind, to move them, that kind of thing, to buy them off, whatever it is. Man, trusting God. And Daniel learned that lesson, and he knew that, hey, no matter what, God's with me. I can't manipulate the lions, can't manipulate the Medo-Persian king or its senate. I can't do any of that. I really have no control over all these other things, people and animals, right? It says, then the king gave orders to arrest these men who maliciously, came at Daniel. And it says he had thrown them into the lion's den along with their wives and children. And the lions leaped on them and tore them apart before they even hit the floor of the den. Then King Darius sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. Peace and prosperity to you. I declare that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So amazing. Another kind of edict or proclamation, if you will, from the king now of the Medo-Persian Empire that's very similar to that of the Nebuchadnezzar reign in Babylon. The Babylonian kingdom. That's the one of that. This is the living God. That Yahweh isn't just a God of gods. He's not just one God of many gods, but he's the God, the true and living God. That's the proclamation. When we come to God, we're coming to the true and living God. The God who is able. The God who is able to do things. The God is able to change people's minds. The God is able to put things on people's hearts. The God who owns all the cattle, on 1,000 hills. God knows he can do it. Do you trust him with the people in your life? Do I trust him with the people in my life? Or am I trying to manipulate my son or manipulate my daughter or manipulate my wife or manipulate people in the church? And, because I want them to do certain things my way, what I think is the right thing. Who am I? Maybe my way's not right at all. Maybe I have it absolutely off. Maybe the best thing to do is just trust the Lord with people. And maybe that's the easy yoke of it all. It's just putting everybody in the hands of Jesus, who, can hold everybody and counsel everybody and help everybody and save everybody and resurrect everybody. You get the idea. He can sanctify people. He can do it. I can't. I can try to manipulate. I can try to flatter and use these kind of ways, these ways of speaking to manipulate people. But it's really the arm of the flesh. That's what it is. Wowee. What a chapter. What a good one. on our character defects, the sinful things in here, right? You might have never read this chapter this way and really thought about really the motivators behind what's going on here. But I hope, through our devotion time, you see some of those things now and you go, man, now I have something to take to the Lord and really pray and ask the Lord to deal with something in my life. So I hope that's a good start for you. So you guys have a great one. And Tina, I'm going to be doing that too. Empty us, Lord, and fill us with you. Absolutely. So Paula, it's so good having you here. And yeah, I know you got some catching up to do and you got some appointments. So we'll be lifting you up in prayer. Totally. So Adrian, glad you're watching as well. And everybody else who catches this later, you guys take care, okay? Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.